It was a Monday night that felt like any other in Lower Manhattan, humid, neon bright, and impatient. Taxi horns threaded through the steam rising from subway grates. Shop fronts on Church Street glowed like little aquariums of denim, shoes, and late summer sale tags. In one window across from the World Trade Center, Century 21, the department store that stayed busy until closing, security cameras caught a young woman in a white top and dark slacks paying for a small stack of things: sheets, lingerie, a pair of shoes. Her receipt time stamped the purchase a little after 5. Bags in hand, she turned toward the doors, stepped into the moving crowd, and was gone. Her name was Dr. Sneha Anne Philip, 31 years old, an Indian-American physician just beginning to find her footing in the city that promised everything and forgave nothing. She and her husband, Dr. Ron Lieberman, lived a short walk from the Twin Towers, in a modest apartment whose windows framed the skyline like a postcard. They were newly married and stubbornly busy, opposite shifts, clashing rotations, a calendar full of hospital nights and Sunday brunches they often missed. Her life in those weeks felt like a tug-of-war between difficult residency reviews and freer nights out. Wine bars, dance floors, long conversations with other interns who also didn't sleep much. She was brilliant, tender in a crisis, sometimes reckless with herself, always certain the next day would sort out the mess of the last. On September 10, 2001, the city ran as usual, oblivious. After shopping, Sneha didn't go straight home. Maybe she met a friend. Maybe she wandered the familiar streets she liked to claim as hers, the corridors of light that made downtown feel safer than it was. When Ron came in from an ER shift after midnight, the apartment lights were off. The cat watched the door with slow blinks, and Sneha wasn't there. It wasn't strange enough to scare him. She had stayed out before, sleeping on a friend's pullout after too much wine or not enough distance from a late shift. He showered, fed the cat, and went to bed with his pager and a dull certainty he would see her in the morning. Morning arrived like a blade. 8:46 a.m., the first strike into the North Tower. 9:03 a.m., the second. The world tipped, and what had been a personal worry fell into an abyss of fire and glass. Smoke boiled down the avenues. Strangers held strangers' hands. When Ron forced his way back toward their block hours later, the air was thick with grit, and the electricity was gone. Doors upstairs had been kicked open by firefighters. Ash lay across the hardwood like gray snow. The windows were ajar. The cat had burrowed beneath the bed. No Sneha. Purse and keys missing. No note. No sign of a restless night turned into harm. Only a vacancy so loud it almost drowned the sirens. What came next was the ritual everyone in New York learned that week. Phones that connected to nothing. Long walks that felt like trespass through a wounded city, hospital lobbies jammed with lists and faces. Ron traced a frantic circuit through Manhattan, then Queens and Brooklyn, emergency rooms, triage tents, morgues. He showed photos, left his number, said her name until it felt like a spell that did not work. He watched the missing posters multiply on the plywood fences, smiling couples, stiff graduation portraits, quick snapshots with the wrong lighting, and felt, in his own bones, the cruelty of believing that a piece of paper could summon someone home. The last confirmed fact remained stubborn. Sneha, at Century 21 on the 10th, buying ordinary things to make a small home a little better. Everything afterward was hypothesis and faith. Did she go out with friends and get caught when the streets sealed? Did she wake to smoke in the hallway and run toward the towers because that's what a doctor does? She lived, after all, in the shadow of people who ran toward danger as other people ran away. If she heard the first impact, if she saw the river of bodies moving south, it would have been almost impossible not to follow, not to offer her hands and her voice and the spare bandages still in her bag. If she made it near the plaza, the math becomes brutal. Many who stood there had no remains at all. Investigators, asked to build a story out of rubble, tried to reconcile the city's worst mourning with one woman's complicated life. Months earlier, her residency had faltered. Complaints bloomed into disciplinary notes. Gossip folded into official language about missed shifts and unprofessional behavior. Her family said she was targeted, brown, outspoken, a woman who did not flatter authority. Others said the hours were eroding her. A minor arrest over an argument in a bar, later sealed, gave tabloids a shorthand they prefer: wild, troubled, out late. But shorthand is not a life. Friends remembered a woman who split herself between mercy and motion, affectionate and fierce, capable of working a double shift and then closing the bar at 2. It is hard to weigh that against the simplicity of disaster. Evidence refused to deliver a clean answer. Her credit cards went still after the shopping trip. Her purse was missing, which could mean she left on purpose or simply kept it with her until the sirens pulled her outside. Her building sat inside the zone that would become dust and emergency tape. Her path to any hospital would have been choked with chaos. The kind of proof that closes a file: video of her turning toward West Street, a chart signed with her scrawl, a name on a morgue intake, never appeared. Ron did not stop. He walked his grief into petitions and hearings, a husband trying to give his wife the only certainty a city like this could still offer: recognition. To be counted among the dead was, for some families, intolerable. For others, it was the only way to bury what the city could not return. Lawyers argued over timelines and probabilities. Was the last night out a clue to private self-destruction? Or was it simply a night out, as ordinary and unfinished as a receipt? Years passed, then rulings. In 2008, after appeals, the city acknowledged what her husband had insisted: that Sneha likely died on September 11th, a physician who did what physicians do, and that the catastrophe which stole her had also stolen the evidence of her courage. Some still disagree. A narrative that she died before the attacks, violence by a stranger, an accident behind a closed door, has its adherents. New York circulates such stories the way it circulates weather: warm front of rumor, cold front of correction, always changing, never resolved. The people who loved her live with something heavier than disagreement. They live with a blank space in the middle of a national trauma, a grief no ritual quite fits. Her parents keep her room in photographs tidy and bright. Her brother remembers a spirited sister who laughed with her whole face. Ron remembers a woman who arrived in his life like a summer storm and chose him. He remembers sitting in a quiet apartment with ash in his hair, listening for her steps on the stairs. There are details that snag the mind: the new sheets, bought the night before, never unwrapped; the open windows, to let in the evening breeze on the 10th, to let in dust and sirens on the 11th; the cat's claws in the couch fabric, panic written by an animal that could not understand; her white coat hanging by the door, her shoes in a crooked line; the ordinary choreography of a life paused mid-gesture, as if the city had leaned down and pressed 2 fingers to its pulse and then removed them. Walk those blocks now and the air is different, but the habit of looking up remains. Wind moves where buildings used to be. Century 21 reopened, then closed again. Its bright bags became the kind of circular time New Yorkers understand. Shops die and are reborn. The past insists. If you stand on Church Street at dusk, the glass towers throw long rectangles of light that look from a certain angle like doors. People pass through them without noticing. Somewhere in that light you can imagine a woman with shopping bags, scanning the curb for a taxi or deciding to walk. You can imagine her stopping when the first siren passed, then another, then a flood. You can imagine her choosing. A missing person case likes to end with a knock on the door or a call that explains everything. A mass casualty event likes to end with a memorial name engraved in stone. Sneha Anne Philip lives in the seam where those endings don't meet, a name both missing and memorialized, a last night captured in pixels and a morning erased by fire. We do not know whether she died as a victim who ran to help or as a woman caught by a city that can turn on anyone, anywhere, without warning. We know only that her trail goes dark the night before the sky did. She was last seen leaving a store with small luxuries and domestic promises. Within hours, ash fell like winter, and every certainty that could have led us to her burned away. The city kept moving, the river kept wearing the shoreline down, the posters curled and fell. But somewhere between the receipts and the ruin is a heartbeat that insists a life was here and it mattered. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.